Hi, and welcome to Postscript. Nice to have you with us today. I'm John Peterson from the Arlington Institute, and we get together like this about once a month, and it's usually associated with our program that we do locally called Transition Talks. The Arlington Institute for almost 30 years now has sponsored a speaker series where we bring marvelous, provocative, interesting speakers from all over the world to come and talk about the extraordinary change that's going on in the world today. We're in the middle of an amazing kind of transition from one era to a new one, and the new world is going to be populated by new humans that operate in different ways and have different characteristics. And the new world is going to have a whole new set of values and other such things. It's literally a paradigm shift. And so we're happy to have our old friend, Dr. Harold Puthoff, with us here today. Hal, it's nice to have you with us.
Thanks, John. Good to be here.
You and I go back quite a ways. We've been
yes,
friends
into the 70s or whatever.
Spent many hours, many towns, other places all around the world, kind of doing on one thing or another. For our viewers, you're a quantum physicist by education, PhD, and I guess you're best known for being in the early 70s, starting the remote viewing program at SRI, which was at Stanford Research Institute at the time, and where you used psychics to essentially for the government to spy on.
Yeah, for the CIA and DIA.
Yeah. Tell us quickly about that, and then we'll talk about some other kind of things.
Well, I was straight physicist, got my PhD at Stanford, had just published a quantum electronics book, graduate level, published in English, French, and Russian. And one of the things that kind of bugged me was, well, what about consciousness? Can we account for that in our physics and so on? So I was kind of searching around for ways to look into that kind of thing. And so just on a lark, I did an experiment with a famous psychic who perturbed some well-shielded quantum chips inside.
Ingo Swann.
Ingo Swann, yeah. And I circulated that around, and so suddenly the CIA landed on my doorstep and said, "Oh, we've been looking for you." The Russians and East Bloc countries are spending millions of dollars a year on, quote, ESP, and no scientist in America even believes there is such a thing.
Yeah.
And turns out my background, aside from my physics, has been in the intelligence community. I was a naval intelligence officer, spent several years at NSA, National Security Agency. So he looked into my background and asked me, since he saw I had all the clearances and everything, well, since you're willing to do this experiment kind of on a lark, would you be willing to look at this field for us? And of course, their idea was, I'm hoping you'll find it's all nonsense, so we don't have to worry about it. But anyway, that grew into, 23-year program, working for many parts of the government, top secret programs and so on, training Army intelligence officers and that kind of thing. But at some point, I wanted to get back to my physics, so I accepted a position to be director of the Institute for Advanced Studies in Austin and took it, thinking, okay, well, that's the end of my work with the government, and that's good. But it was only a few years later, and the government was looking into how to deal with the UFO problem, as you would say. Mm-hmm. We say UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena. And so I'm going to look into something weird like that. Who are you going to call?
Right.
Well, there I am, and so I got involved in that program. That's what I'll be speaking to your audience today about.
Yeah, and we're really looking forward to that. And you and I have always had this ongoing conversation for the better part of 30 years almost now about whether there was life somewhere else and how it all worked. And we've been involved in a couple of interesting little projects where we tried to anticipate what kind of the disclosure, or if alien life showed up, how what would the implications be? How would it change the world and so on? And
Yeah,
so-
those are some of the most interesting sort of projects that you and I
Yeah.
were involved in, yeah.
But now you're involved in something that, from my point of view, is really quite profound. For years, decades, it was kind of known and presumed that there was some kind of interaction with UFOs, UAPs, with alien life. I mean, there's reports, thousands, if not millions of reports all over the world for years and years that something was going on, and systematically over time, then different other countries started to declassify their reports and their history and these kinds of things. But the United States always was the kind of the holdout.
Yeah.
And so you had all this other stuff going on, and the U.S. always said, oh, well, no, we don't have anything about any of that.
And of course, the truth of the matter is that in the deep background, there was a continuous study from the 40s onward. And but most of it, we thought we'd never see the light of day. And then suddenly, December 2017, New York Times had a front page story on having dug out the existence of this program. And so up till then, the media had sort of treated this as sort of a tinfoil hat crowd thing for Friday afternoon if you didn't have any other news or whatever. But now, suddenly you had people coming forward like senators and pilots from F-18 jets, off carriers, and people in the intelligence and government communities starting to come forth. So that was really sort of a game changer. Yeah.
Well, as I've told you, I think it's kind of the watershed that when you and some of your associates and friends who were involved in some of these programs and came forward and all stood on the stage, I mean, really class act, serious kind of people, and said, this is very real and we ought to do something about it. And we've got hundreds of case studies and videos and all kinds of things. And suddenly it became the de facto, the United States has decided that that they're going to come out or begin the process of disclosure, I guess.
That's right. Recently, a number of videos taken by F-18 pilots have been released, and so it took a bit of time, but finally the Navy came out and announced that, in fact, these are not fake or whatever, these are real things, and we don't understand what they are. And so they admitted for the first time, actually first time in the government, to say, yes, we have evidence of unidentified aerial phenomena that we simply can't identify, and we know it's important. And so finally they actually issued orders for pilots, F-18 pilots, typically off of carriers and so on, to report their sightings. It turns out sightings have been going on for well over decades. But the pilots didn't want to report them because they're going to think I'm drunk or smoking dope or something, and I'll lose my flight status. Now the Navy has issued a requirement that pilots must report any sightings because they've had some encounters where it involved possible safety concerns.
Yeah.
Flying right between a couple of jets that are on a mission, and suddenly something comes through, and so it's a new era in the government's view and the military's view toward at least admitting something's going on.
Yeah. What do you think is going on?
Actually, I'm not sure. We have lots of data, lots of it unexplained, good data to work with, good pilot reports, but generally speaking, exactly what's going on, we can't say.
I mean, there's some, let's go back a little bit. And, you know, historically, there's some kind of iconic events that everybody knows about, Roswell and so on, where these craft crashed. What do you think about that? I mean, is that all real or not, or what?
Well, I don't specifically know about Roswell because my involvement has been looking at recent data. There may have been some crashes. We're not going to discuss them, John. You know that.
There may have been some crashes. Yeah, right.
There are claims and people coming forward with pieces of material that
Right.
they
Yeah.
claim came from crashes.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so we're at least taking it seriously enough to examine materials
Right.
like that get provided to us, see if there's anything we can learn from it.
Yeah. Do you have any sense, for instance, from your background, what are they coming, where these vehicles are coming from? Or?
Yeah, I'm being, as a scientist, and it's my role to do this, I'm being very careful to not try to speculate. So in fact, I've got a whole model called the ultra-terrestrial model, which names every possibility of, what could this be? Is it from other dimensions? Is it from other planets and other solar systems? Is there some secret, say, corporate America aerospace group?
Yeah.
Or some stranded people from elsewhere? I mean, until we actually have the data, I'm really staying away, and actually all my colleagues generally are staying away from trying to put the label on it. Which
Well,
of course,
it's a good position, as a matter of fact. You and I have an old friend, Jacques Vallée, who has built a very compelling and profound kind of career around suggesting that these things are not at all the physical phenomena that we think of them are, or at least that's not the origins of what it is. And so there's a whole spectrum of possibilities here, and obviously there's an effort to try to convince you that it's all physical or manifest into this dimension or whatever it turns out to be, but it could be.
It could be something else entirely that just presents itself as physical. So there are more unknowns and many questions to try to answer than there are knowns at this point.
Well, we've had people here in this speaker series at Transition Talks who talked about archons and jinn and other dimensional kind of entities who all can manifest themselves and do shape-shifting and come in and so on. And I've literally sat here across from somebody as closely as you, a friend of mine, and had him say, well, yeah, I watched this black helicopter that turned into a crow and then turned into a UFO, or something. And you say, God, what in the world? How does this all work?
Yeah, you mentioned Jacques Vallée. He's, first of all, he has this wonderful book called Wonders in the Sky, where he traced really with a quality approach all the way back to thousands of years ago, and then on up through the centuries of these kinds of observations. And as part of his presentation, he and my colleague Eric Davis put together a 7-layer kind of model for what could be happening, ranging all the way from purely physical through interdimensional things up to spiritual manifestations. So it's when we switch to the concept of unidentified aerial phenomena, that's really a good label.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, tell us, you're involved now with To the Stars Academy, and talk to us a little bit about what you're trying to do, because I guess you're probably the most substantial kind of entity or organization that's focused on this area and working in multiple kind of dimensions to try to generate more awareness about it and understand.
Yeah, my becoming part of founding To the Stars Academy of Arts and Science, interesting history. Many of us that were working in the program that got revealed by New York Times and other people, senators coming out and talking about it. Nonetheless, in the government, it's a tough row to hoe. It's not exactly career enhancing to say, I want to be in charge of the UFO issue. And so a lot of data that could be shared, for example, the videos that are now all over the internet and on TV, were just languishing in Pentagon servers, but they could be declassified and released and so on. And so a number of us that were involved in the program decided, there should be an open group of people who know a lot about what's going on, and we need to bring what can be shared out into the public and get a conversation going. So several of us got together and formed To the Stars Academy of Arts and Science. Interestingly enough, the fellow who got it started was Tom DeLonge of Blink-182, a rock star.
Yeah.
But it turned out that in the background, he's always been interested in UFOs and ESP and that kind of thing, and he had a lot of good connections into people in aerospace corporations and the government, and said, there should be an organization that, to the degree we can be discussing this in the open, seriously, we should do that. So he decided to form To the Stars. And so some of the people we have associated with our group are, for example, Lou Elizondo, who in fact ran the program in the Pentagon and left to come be as part of To the Stars. We have Chris Mellon, who is a former Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, and so he's part of our operation. Steve Justice, who is, ran black programs with billion-dollar budgets for Lockheed Martin Skunk Works. He's part of our group. Jim Simivan, who I knew for years from CIA, he's actually a true James Bond kind of guy, worked in the Director of Operations, and so he's joined our group. And then we pulled together some scientists to work with and so on. And so our activities have ranged all over the place. From behind the scenes, we do end up talking to congressional committees and senators and so on. I briefed congressional committees twice on the program. And then in the science area and aerospace area, we're trying to raise funds to do some really forward-looking look into the best of what we know scientifically to try to explain how such craft, if they're physical, could operate. And then the general science group that says, there are a lot of taboo subjects, UAPs, UFO, maybe SETI, all that, psychokinesis, whatever. These should not be throwing babies out with bathwater. We should take a good look at them. And we're forming a good relationships with corporate entities, with government entities, to do serious kind of thing. And TTSA, for example, last season had a series of episodes on the History Channel called Unidentified. And it wasn't your usual UFO hunters or something like that. Instead, it was primarily Lou Elizondo actually interviewing the F-18 pilots, interviewing the radar operators that have been involved with tracking all this stuff. And so actually getting facts out instead of fiction.
Yeah.
And so that's educational aspect we think is important.
So it's kind of like educational and entertainment and research, and you kind of evolved across the whole across the whole board. Yeah, and again, there are many people in the UFO space, but there's a substance and there's a kind of a critical mass about what you've all brought together that is really quite encouraging and appealing. I've suggested to you that I believe that a decade from now, this whole subject matter will have been opened up so much and will have turned into something quite different than what it is right now, and potentially even ongoing conversations with alien life or extraterrestrial life or whatever. And the world will be so different, then you'll be able to point back and say to folks like you and your associates at TTSA, that was the watershed. That was the window opened right then, and that began to legitimate. And
one of the things that is going to emerge from this is that there are other countries, of course, who also have their sighting
Yeah.
archives and at least claim to have some pieces of craft and that kind of thing. But they learned early on that sharing it with the U.S. government was not such a great idea because it disappears into a black hole and
Yeah.
they never learn anything. So once we set up To the Stars Academy, we've gone back and made connections with these leaders in foreign countries. We've talked to generals from Brazil and whatever. And so we've said, you know, look, this is a public benefit corporation. We're going to share data that we obtain. So if you come up with stuff that you think we should be looking at, whether it's videos or interviews with your pilots or pieces of material that seem exotic or whatever, collaborate with us.
Yeah.
And we'll see this sees the light of day. And so we have many conversations going on with people from
Yeah.
other countries. And so that's going to be a big
There's
sort
a
of game
whole
changer.
kind of movement. What's a public benefit corporation, by the way?
Public Benefit Corporation, it sort of kind of lies halfway between just, I don't know, money raising kind of thing like crowdfunding or an IP corporation or whatever. You know, it's kind of in the middle. It's a new category where people can buy shares. They're not yet to be traded
Right.
in the market, but it's an SEC corporation. Eventually, if we have an IP, they'll be able to convert their shares and trade them on the market. But meanwhile, it's a big piece of the public benefit corporation that whatever you're doing, you have to show that you're benefiting the public, independent of sharing shares with individual. So that's why providing information with these TV interviews and so
Yeah.
on is part of that.
You know, as would be natural, I guess, there's a lot of criticism or people that are sniping about TTSA, about, oh, you guys are all still a front for the CIA and things like that. And obviously you all have relationships, continuing relationships with the government, or you can't forget what you knew and the people that you knew. But but there's something a lot kind of bigger here, and by that I mean that the government and particularly the people, your associates, come out of the defense and the intelligence community, and they're oriented toward threats. I mean, that's the business.
Right.
That's the business. It's the mindset. And so I've listened to a number of interviews where people were all critical of Lou Elizondo or who else, saying that all they want to do is look at threats, and that's their business. That's where they came from. I mean, I've been in that business in the past, and so I understand about it. But on the other hand, there's the whole business of this emergence and of a new era in terms of the evolution of humanity. That is that's I'm particularly interested in. Can you talk at all about that? And have you thought much about that kind of aspect of where the species is going and how this opening up to new ideas and a larger sense of reality?
I think I can. Let me start with the concern that the critics have said that we're just some front for the CIA or whatever. Although many of us come out of intelligence and defense community and so on, believe me, we are not a front for them. They would just assume that we went away because, if anything, the fact that there's so much more discussion and conversation in the public media about this, that makes problems for them because now they're drowning in FOIA requests and so on. So no, we're a group of people who have, sort of are thinking, as you say, have been concerned about threat in the past. That's just the way it is. But we think that there's a bigger issue here involved, and if it should eventually lead to, let's say, contact with aliens or with multidimensional creatures, or who knows what. I mean, obviously that's going to make a big difference. And so from my own background, starting out as a really straight arrow physicist, and then getting drawn into the remote viewing program by the CIA and DIA, and then finding out, oh my gosh, there are people who just sitting in their armchairs at home can, with a little bit of training, a little bit of instruction, really see events elsewhere and so on. So that opens up a whole new window that, gee, there's a lot going on.
Yeah, reality
here.
isn't what we thought it
Reality
was.
isn't,
Yeah.
you know, what you ordinarily think it is. And then finally getting into the UFO area and seeing the complexities there, and it's unbelievably complex. So the main take-home message is that our usual sort of ordinary view of reality is really a small element. And I mean, there are all kinds of things. I mean, like healers and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
As I'm also a fellow of the Fetzer Institute, and we look at some shaman healing in China and that kind of thing. But there's some amazing things going on. So I think that each of these are all pushes in new directions to say the human being is much more than what ordinarily our educational system tells us it is. And so there have always been these, quote, fringe groups who pursue these elements, but it doesn't become part of the mainstream. But I think now that we have many elements coming forth with better and better documentation, you might say. For example, in the UFO area or the UAP area, we now have military platforms that are so technically exquisite that you can no longer say, well, maybe it was just a flare or something.
Oh, yeah.
No, you've got great detailed data. And in the alternative medicine area, we now have excellent investigations involving DNA analysis and you name it. So there are areas like that are showing new outcomes. And of course, in the remote viewing era, so-called area, I mean, that's just a whole new element of finding out that there's a whole talent within the human being that's, I mean, we found in the program that we did that, you know, it's a bell curve like everything else. You got virtuosos at one end of the scale, tone-deaf people at the other, but most anybody in the middle can learn to play an instrument, to play a tune. Well, it turns out the same thing with what ordinarily gets labeled paranormal phenomena, that it's a bell curve distribution. Some countries like India take it for granted.
Yeah.
Countries in the Western culture basically don't. And so that's coming to the fore. So all these things are beginning to knit together and beginning to reveal a much expanded view of human life. And it even gets to the point where, for example, in remote viewing, we did some challenges about if remote viewers are so great, why don't they make money at the stock market or Las Vegas or whatever? And so we did some experiments where we used that process to do silver futures.
Right.
In 30 days in the market, we made $260,000.
Right.
And so the fact that you, in principle, could even see into the future and have actual documented proof with great statistics and money in your pocket, you begin to realize, well, there's a whole aspect that people are not absolutely tied to the present. There's some element of... And it turns out that, fortunately, at the same time, our expansion of ideas in quantum physics with quantum entanglement and non-locality and all these kinds of things that physicists are very busy gathering really good data on, but they haven't made it into the mainstream thinking as to who we are and what we can do. But when all of that gets integrated, you know, we're going to have a whole new picture.
Yeah, well, what you've described quite delightfully is this convergence from multiple kind of dimensions that is reconfiguring the kind of the essential nature of who human beings are, the understanding of who we are, and moving us from one era to another one. And in that process, all the old ideas kind of implode or collapse and a whole bunch of new ones come up. And what you and your associates at TTSA are doing is an integral part of that, an important part of that, and we're really pleased to have you here today and looking forward to what you have to say.
Well, I'm looking forward to to presenting my data. Yeah.
Yes, we appreciate your being with us. Thanks, Hal.
Well,
coming.
thanks for the invitation. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
And thank you for being with us. We try to do this on a regular basis. We'll be back about once a month. And we've got Joni Patry coming next month. Joni Patry is a world-class astrologer, quite a force on the internet, and she's going to come and talk about long-term, what the astrological kind of indicators are for the changes that are coming in the next 5 to 7 years, and so that'll be interesting. And we hope that you'll come. You can find out complete information on our program at transitiontalks.org, and we're located here in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, just 100 miles from Washington and Baltimore, and it's a wonderful little resort town where you can come and spend a weekend and get provoked intellectually, as well as get massaged and all kinds of good things for your mind and your spirit and your body. And we hope that you'll come and be with us. And so thanks again. I'm John Peterson from the Arlington Institute, and we thank you for coming and being with us in Postscript.